Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe our video. Please press on bell icon to get our new video notification. Hello friends, how are you? Welcome to our channel, Knowledge, Vito. Today we will discuss about a very rare, dangerous and silent disease called SMA, means spinal muscular atrophy. Spinal muscular atrophy, SMA, is an inherited disease that affects nerves and muscles, causing muscles to become increasingly weak. It mostly affects infants and children but can also develop in adults. First we discuss about its symptoms. Difficulty in breathing, sucking, eating, swallowing and not able to sit on their own. Spontaneous tongue movements. All symptoms are noticeable within 1 to 4 months/week of childbirth, or until the child is 18 months or in younger age. Types of SMA are: Type 1. In Type 1, usually symptoms known at the age of 0 to 6 months. Children with Type 1 have limited movement, can't sit without support, and have trouble breathing, feeding and swallowing. Symptoms begin within months after birth. Many children with Type 1 do not live past age 2. Type 2. In Type 2, usually symptoms known at the age of 6 months to 2 years. Children with this type may sit without support at some point but cannot walk on their own. Symptoms typically start between 6 and 18 months of age. Depending on the severity of symptoms, children with Type 2 may have a normal lifespan. Type 3. In Type 3, usually symptoms known at the age of 18 months to teens. Children with Type 3 usually are able to walk, most have some difficulty walking. Some may eventually need to use a wheelchair. Symptoms usually appear around 18 months of age or in early childhood. Children with this type of SMA generally have an almost normal life expectancy. Type 4. In Type 4, usually symptoms known at the age after 35 years. Is very rare. It usually starts in young adulthood, and causes mild motor impairment, diseases that destroys motor neurons, nerve cells in the brainstem and spinal cord that control essential skeletal muscle activities such as speaking, walking, breathing, and swallowing, leading to muscle weakness and atrophy. Motor neurons control movement in the arms, legs, chest, face, throat, and tongue. When there are disruptions in the signals between motor neurons and muscles, the muscles gradually weaken. Now question is why motor neurons are not functioning. Let's start understand with the help of a diagram. SMA happens when motor neurons in the spinal cord and the brainstem either do not work or stop working because of changes in genes known as survival motor neuron 1, SMN1, and SMN2. Why motor neuron not work properly? For this we go inside the motor neuron. The most common form of SMA is caused by defects in both copies of the survival motor neuron 1 gene, SMN1, on chromosome 5q. This gene produces the survival motor neuron, SMN, protein which maintains the health and normal function of motor neurons. Let's go to gene, SMN1, on chromosome 5q which produces SMN protein. Go to cell body. The cell is the basic structure of the body. The human body is built of billions and trillions of cells. Cells of various organs vary according to their function. In cell, go to nucleus. Nucleus, this is the central part of the cell that carries the blueprint for the cell functioning and tells the cell when to grow, reproduce and die. It also houses DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. In nucleus, go to chromosomes. Within the nucleus, the DNA strands are tightly packed to form chromosomes. Humans typically have 23 pairs of chromosomes, for a total of 46. 22 of these pairs, called autosomes, look the same in both males and females. The 23rd pair is called the sex chromosomes and differs between males and females. Females have 2 copies of the X chromosome or 20, while males have 1 X and 1 Y chromosome. Chromosomes are made up of DNA. Chromosomes are found in the nucleus of each cell. DNA is the genetic material which conjugation drives all the hereditary information. DNA can be considered as one of the building blocks of the body. DNA contains 4 chemical bases: adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine. Genes, which are made up of DNA, act as instructions to make molecules called proteins. Genes are segments of DNA. Each gene contains information about a certain trait. Genes are transcribed and translated by the cell to make proteins. Proteins create a visible phenotype. Example: one gene might code for eye color. The gene is used by cells to make proteins which create green pigment in our eyes. Now come to the question, what causes spinal muscular atrophy? SMA is caused by a deficiency of a motor neuron protein called SMN, for survival of motor neuron. This SMN protein seems to be necessary for normal motor neuron function. SMN plays a pivotal role in gene expression in motor neurons. Its deficiency is caused by genetic flaws, mutations, on chromosome 5 in a gene called SMN1. Typically, people have 2 copies of the SMN1 gene and 1 to 2 copies of the SMN2 gene in each cell. However, the number of copies of the SMN2 gene varies, with some people having up to 8 copies. In people with spinal muscular atrophy, having multiple copies of the SMN2 gene is usually associated with less severe features of the condition that develop later in life. The SMN protein produced by the SMN2 genes can help make up for the protein deficiency caused by SMN1 gene mutations. People with spinal muscular atrophy type 0 usually have 1 copy of the SMN2 gene in each cell, while those with type I generally have 1 or 2 copies, those with type 2 usually have 3 copies, those with type 3 have 3 or 4 copies, and those with type 4 have 4 or more copies. SMA is linked to chromosome 5q13 in more than 95% of patients, where there is a large inverted duplication of a 500 kilobit element. The SMN1 gene provides all the SMN protein that we require, while SMN2 usually produces only a fraction of that. SMA patients lack SMN1 and rely only on SMN2 for their SMN protein. Only 10 to 15% of all functional SMN protein is produced from the SMN2 gene, the rest is produced from the SMN1 gene. Typically, people have 2 copies of the SMN1 gene and 1 to 2 copies of the SMN2 gene in each cell. However, the number of copies of the SMN2 gene varies, with some people having up to 8 copies. The more SMN2 gene copies a person has, the more SMN protein they produce. SMN gene generates RNA copies that contain introns and exons. On slicing, all introns are deleted or removed and only exons are added in mRNA, which in translate into amino acid chain and convert it into protein, and this protein is used by motor neuron for survival of motor neurons. SMN gene generates RNA copies that contain introns and exons. The complication in identifying carriers of SMN1 mutations is that humans have 2 nearly identical copies of SMN1 and SMN2 located on chromosome 5. The major difference between SMN1/SMN2 is found at the beginning of exon 7. There is a single nucleotide difference, C for SMN1 and T for SMN2. Additionally, SMN1 mRNA includes exon 7 whereas the SMN2 mRNA generally excludes exon 7. Patients suffering spinal muscular atrophy, due to deletion of exon 7 in SMN1 gene. SMN1 mRNA includes exon 7 whereas the SMN2 mRNA generally excludes exon 7. All individuals with spinal muscular atrophy have at least one backup gene, known as SMN2. The SMN2 gene has a similar structure to SMN1, but only a small amount, 10%, of the SMN protein it produces is fully functional. This low level of SMN protein is not effective enough to sustain the survival of motor neurons. Some people having up to 8 copies. The more SMN2 gene copies a person has, the more SMN protein they produce. Is spinal muscular atrophy genetic? Spinal muscular atrophy is an autosomal recessive disease, which means that for an individual to be at risk, he or she must inherit one mutated SMN1 gene from each parent. If a child inherits only one mutated SMN1 gene, they are considered a carrier, but usually do not have symptoms of spinal muscular atrophy. If you have a family history of spinal muscular atrophy, your chances of being a carrier are greater than average. In making reproductive decisions, it may be helpful to consult with your physician and/or genetic counselor to learn what mutations are common in your family. Coming soon with our new knowledge video. Have a nice day. Bye bye.